Hi, my name's Eric, and I'll be reading you selections from the e-edition of today's Cape Cod Times, dated Monday, August 11th of 2025. This is a half-hour reading of the local news only. We'll start with the weather, as we always do. Across the Cape and Islands, sunshine, very warm and humid today. High of 86. It'll feel a little warmer than that, I'm sure. Tonight, clear and humid, a low of 67. Tomorrow, Tuesday, record-breaking temperatures. It's going to be hot, high of 88, low of 69, and again, very humid, very uncomfortable. We have a heat wave, as it used to be called. Now it may be called a heat dome, over us, and most of this week will feel warm, very warm. So hydrate. Make sure that if you're doing any kind of errands or you're outside working in the yard, that kind of stuff, try to do it early morning, late afternoon, and make sure you cover up and use repellent so the ticks and bugs don't get you. Wednesday, mostly sunny and humid, high of 86, low of 71. Thursday, very warm and humid with partial sunshine, high of 87, low of 67. Friday, less humid with abundant sunshine, high of 82 and a low of 66, so we might have some relief in the weekend. The sun will rise at 5:46 a.m. today. It'll set at 7:46 p.m. We'll have 14 hours of daylight. The moon will rise at 9:04 p.m. and set at 8:13 a.m. Heading to the front of the paper, which used to be where the lottery results were kept, but they don't print those anymore in the Times. I guess space is at a premium. So we go to the masslottery.com website because we had a listener ask us to read the results because they couldn't stay up late enough to hear the late results of the lottery. And we're happy to do so. So for the numbers game of yesterday, Sunday, August 10th of 2025, in the midday drawing, the numbers were 6013. Again, yesterday's midday drawing in the numbers game, 6013. In the evening drawing of Sunday, August 10th, the numbers were 0, 4, 5, and 3. Again, the evening drawing for Sunday, August 10th, 0, 4, 5, 3. Good luck to all who play, and remember us if you win. Now, from the cover of today's Cape Cod Times, Tall Ship has a perfect day for a sail out of Provincetown by Susan Vaughn. From her perch on the upper deck of the tall ship Calmer Nickel, Captain Lorne Morgans shouted out orders to her crew on which ropes to pull to raise or lower the different sails. Directly below, a crew member commandeered the whipstaff, a long wooden pole connected to the tiller to steer the ship. As she moved the whipstaff from side to side, the crew member told a visitor that the ship had been designed before ship's wheels had been invented. Morgans was keeping an eye on two men who climbed up the ropes to put the rigging in place. She kept reminding one hand on the shroud. The passengers and crew of the Calmer Nickel, based in Delaware, agreed the sunny 70-degree weather was perfect on the morning of Friday, August 8th, except for not quite enough wind during the ship's first sail out of Provincetown Harbor during its 9-day stay. The ship visited Provincetown last year. It was easy for the nearly 50 passengers who signed up for the 2.5-hour trip to spot the square-rigged, full-scale replica of the Swedish ship at the end of Macmillan Wharf with its huge masts flying the flags of the United States, Sweden, and Finland. The original incarnation of the ship brought settlers to present-day Delaware in 1638 to start the first permanent European settlement in the Delaware Valley, called New Sweden. The passengers soon learned a lot more about the impressive replica built in the mid-1990s from the crew of 29, 5 staff, 24 volunteers. The well-versed volunteers, who range in age from 14 to 80, shared history and many facts about the ship with the visitors throughout the voyage while attending to their assigned jobs. 7 miles of rope on Calmer Nickel. Volunteer crew member Ken Pinault 66, formerly of New Hampshire, who now lives in Wilmington, Delaware, said the ship is run like those of the 17th century. The ship has 7 miles of rope, is 98 feet long at waterline, and 141 feet total length. All the ropes do something. All are handmade, Pinot said. He pointed out the ironwork, handmade by a female blacksmith, and the many carvings around the boat were based on drawings of the mother ship, Vasa. It's 90% authentic, he said. Sails are made by the DuPont Company of recycled plastic. The cannons fire 6-pound balls, and the Swedish naval flag is the only one allowed to fly out of Sweden, another crew member said. Singing a sea shanty. After getting safety tips and how to maneuver the tight ship and spiral stairs to the upper deck, passengers were soon called on to help pull the heavy rope lines. Second mate Aida Morgan Russell called out the commands that raised the topsail and mainsail, while the crew and visitors sang a sea shanty. Heave away, haul away. Morgan said the topsails raised to help catch more wind as the wind speed was probably under 5 knots. So the ship wasn't going too far out that day. A crew member who works full-time but took the week off to make the voyage to the Cape described the extensive training the volunteers go through during a 3-week period, or 10 weekends, to learn about being a deckhand. They can graduate to deck chief and add training to do maintenance, and some log up to thousands of hours on the ship, she said. The ship has an educational program for 4th graders in the spring and fall to learn about a part of their Delaware history, she said. The Calmer Nickel Foundation is a nonprofit educational organization that provides many programs and events all year. And by the way, the spelling of the ship is Kalmarnyckel. Kalmar Nickel is how I'm saying it. If it's wrong, call me and let me know. We got to do the heave-ho, said Diane Allen of North Truro in Florida, who was with her husband, Ernie Crawford. It was their second attempt to sail on the Calmer Nickel because their voyage last year was canceled because of weather. So Allen made sure she signed up again. Several passengers came in groups. David Scarcilli of Yarmouthport, who has sailed a lot in smaller boats, brought his son-in-law, Joe Malloy of Palmer, and 4 other friends who helped pull the lines. Scarcilli, who's 77 years old, said he'd like to climb the ropes. State Representative Hadley Luddy, a Democrat in Orleans, and Chief Executive Officer of the Homeless Prevention Council of Orleans, brought her staff on the voyage for their annual summer outing, and they loved it. I'm interested in this. I'd like to volunteer, said Sonny Badams, Council Intake Coordinator. It's so beautiful. I've never been on a sailboat, said Dottie Rose, the Council's Youth and Young Adult Case Manager. Sails on the Calmer Nickel from Provincetown are scheduled through August 17th. However, several have sold out. And for availability, you can check the website calmernickel.org/explore. And again, that's KALMARNYCKEL.org/explore, EXPLORE. Or, what is easier for many of our listeners, you can call 302-429-7447. That's 302-429-7447. And now's a good time to remind you that if you miss any of the information we share, such as phone numbers or emails, things like that, addresses, you can always go to audiblelocalledger.org and click on the Listen tab. It's a fully disability-compliant website. Click on that Listen tab. You can catch up on a week's worth of our newspaper readings. We keep 150 of them that rotate through, so it's actually more than a week up there. We also keep a wide variety of periodicals and literature up there for your listening pleasure. They stay up there in perpetuity, and we keep the shopping guides there so you know what's on sale at the supermarket. All of that's free for people who are blind or vision impaired at audiblelocalledger.org. From the State House News Service, Chris Lisinski. The headline reads, "Delay announced for next scheduled Massachusetts offshore wind purchase." With the current batch of offshore wind talks facing prolonged headwinds, Massachusetts officials will keep the subsequent development round paused until at least 2026. The State Department of Energy Resources said in a memo that was published Thursday that parties don't expect to submit a draft request for proposals for the fifth offshore wind procurement, which would contain a proposed timetable and a method of solicitation for department review, until next year at the earliest. Officials cited delays in existing contract talks as well as uncertainty from the federal government pertaining to offshore wind permitting and generally. Massachusetts remains committed to an all-of-the-above approach to energy, including offshore wind, but due to uncertainty surrounding federal permitting and tax credits in this moment, the state will not conduct an offshore wind procurement in 2025, said DOER spokesperson Lauren Diggin. As we work to lower energy bills and meet growing energy demand, we're bringing more energy into Massachusetts with the completion of Vineyard Wind and the New England Clean Energy Connect hydropower line, advancing new, strong solar programs, speeding up permitting, and pushing for more transmission to connect us to affordable energy. We'll also develop a more flexible offshore wind procurement schedule so ratepayers can secure the best deals. The move appears likely to further delay the eventual build-out of offshore wind power, an industry that state leaders have long targeted as vital to Massachusetts. Wind infrastructure has struggled to achieve liftoff here amid changing market conditions and, more recently, a shift in federal policy under President Donald Trump. Contract talks are ongoing for the fourth round of procurement under a state law, sometimes known as Section 83C. Project developers selected by the state were supposed to complete those negotiations with utilities by August 14th of 2024. But the deadline has been pushed back several times, most recently to December 31st of this year, 2025. Section 83C, Round 4 contract negotiations need to conclude for such improvements to be fully understood and completely incorporated into the Round 5 procurement process. DOER attorneys Ben Dobbs and Colin Carroll wrote in the memo that was published Thursday. The Trump administration has moved to deprioritize clean power, including offshore wind. The Department of the Interior last month called for elevated review of decisions related to wind and solar energy facilities, a move it described as leveling the playing field for coal and natural gas. Our next story, as we keep it local being the islands, Dershowitz pierogi controversy continues, by Rin Velasco of USA Today. A spat over a pierogi vendor refusing to sell to a multimillionaire continues to draw attention. Good Pierogi, the Martha's Vineyard pierogi vendor that refused to sell to famous lawyer and multimillionaire Alan Dershowitz, has spoken out on Instagram after continued public aspersions cast by Dershowitz. The vendor cited the attorney's legal representation of sexual predators, specifically naming the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein as the reason for the July 30th, 2025 refusal of service. Quote, "I personally know too many sexual abuse survivors. Mr. Dershowitz consciously decided to befriend and defend men who have been accused of abusing and harming women," the vendor's post said. "The food we make is a labor of love. It's our craft. In our minds and hearts, selling to Alan Dershowitz was the equivalent to supporting his decisions and statements." End quote. The vendor, whose name is Krem Miskovich and who goes by they, them pronouns, said that Dershowitz then publicly harassed and misgendered them after the refusal of service. Dershowitz accused Miskovich, who said that they are Jewish and has family in Israel, of being anti-Semitic. If not for the traction gained from his one-sided mythical storyline, we would have remained silent, the Instagram post said. However, the continued aggression and threats of groundless litigation have been followed by the distribution of defamatory flyers where we conduct business in an effort to cement further falsehoods. Dershowitz said on X that people should not buy pierogies that have been poisoned with anti-Semitism on August 4th, 2025, the day before Miscavige posted their response. As I correctly suspected, the bigot who refused to sell me pierogi, Krem Miscavige, is a notorious anti-Semite who is part of an anti-Semitic organization that protests Jewish, not only Israeli, cultural events and doesn't believe in Israel's right to exist or to respond to what these haters regard as the justified massacres of October 7th, Dershowitz said. Dershowitz has not returned a request for comment. If I knew that the local rabbi correctly characterized their anti-Jewish protests as anti-Semitic, I would never have tried to buy their tainted pierogi. Neither should you, Dershowitz said on X. The 86-year-old lawyer made a call to action on the social media platform, saying that people should always retaliate against prejudice. Moving inside today's Cape Cod Times, dated August 11th, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration is warning patients and doctors about portable issues seen with Boston Scientific heart devices. The FDA issued alerts on August 6th about the Marlboro-based biotech firm's Endotac Reliance defibrillators and its Watchman access systems, according to the FDA. Boston Scientific has reported several deaths and injuries stemming from safety issues in connection with the devices, the FDA said. While neither warning is classified as a recall, the FDA has provided additional information for the two products. This is very important. If you have a defibrillator or you know someone who you might be taking care of and you're listening to this is pretty important stuff. Boston Scientific told customers that its Endotac Reliance defibrillation leads with expanded polytetrafluoroethylene-coated coils could become calcified, the FDA said. The calcification could prevent the defibrillator from delivering life-saving shocks to the heart, the administration said. This phenomenon is associated with a pattern of gradually rising electrical impedance, and leads may be implanted for up to 8 years before this phenomenon is observed, Boston Scientific said in a statement. It does not affect the physical integrity of the lead, and devices susceptible to this phenomenon are no longer commercially available for distribution or implant. Some patients should have their devices replaced, depending on several factors, the FDA noted. The company has reported 16 patient deaths and 386 serious injuries in connection with the issue as of July 24th, according to the FDA. For more information about the alert, you can visit the FDA's website. FDA warning regarding Watchman access systems. Boston Scientific also updated its instructions for implanting its Watchman access systems, the FDA said in a separate alert. The Watchman access systems give doctors the ability to close a portion of the heart's left atrium, reducing the risk of stroke, according to the FDA. The company said patients under deep or conscious sedation are at an increased risk for negative left atrial pressures, and that doctors should determine the best anesthesia method based on patients' characteristics before performing a Watchman-related procedure. Air embolism is a known risk with all transcatheter procedures requiring vascular access, including to the left atrium, and may be higher in procedures performed under conscious or deep sedation due to negative inspiratory pressure. That's when a patient inhales, and air entry through the access sheath, Boston Scientific said in a statement. As of July 30th, the company has reported 17 patient deaths and 120 serious injuries in connection with the issue, the FDA said. The company's investigation concluded that the increased likelihood of air embolism is not associated with the design or manufacture of any component of the Watchman system, and all access system devices remain available for use, according to Boston Scientific. And again, for more information about the alert, you can visit the FDA's website. From the Cape and Islands section of today's Cape Cod Times, Massachusetts overdue for a major hurricane. What are the odds of one striking? By Seth Jacobson. Massachusetts and the rest of the northeast region of the country haven't experienced a direct Category 1 hurricane landfall or stronger in more than 3 decades, according to a report from AccuWeather. But that could change very quickly. The Northeast is climatologically overdue for a direct hurricane landfall, AccuWeather Chief Meteorologist Jonathan Porter said in a written statement this week. This kind of storm will happen again in New England. It's just a question of when. People have to be prepared. Here's what meteorologists are saying about the possibility of a hurricane making landfall in the Northeast. Hurricane experts say people and businesses across the region must remain prepared, noting that the region's not immune to hurricane impacts and that the area is climatologically overdue for such an event. A long stretch without a landfalling hurricane doesn't mean the risk has gone away. AccuWeather lead hurricane expert Alex De Silva said, the odds of another major hurricane hitting the Northeast are about 1.5% in any given year. This is about the same chance of flipping a coin and getting the same result 6 times in a row. A lot of people in the Northeast don't take hurricanes seriously because they haven't had one since 1991. They think of bad storms as nor'easters, but hurricanes are much worse. According to the Colorado State forecast released in April, there's a 40% chance that at least one storm could impact Massachusetts this season and an 18% chance that it's a hurricane. The AccuWeather 2025 Atlantic hurricane season forecast is predicting 13 to 18 named storms, including 7 to 10 hurricanes, adding 3 to 6 direct U.S. impacts are forecast, the same range as last year's catastrophic season with 6 landfalls. The report noted that the climatological peak of hurricane season begins September 10th. What's the NOAA forecast on hurricanes? NOAA's forecasting a range of 13 to 19 named storms. Of those, 6 to 10 are forecast to become hurricanes, including 3 to 5 major hurricanes. What does Colorado State University predict for hurricane season? The recent report states that people can expect an above-average hurricane season, and so here are some of the numbers. There are 16 named storms. Those are winds of 39 miles per hour or higher expected in 2025, with the historical average, that being 1991 to 2020, being 14.4. There are 80 named storm days expected in 2025, with a historical average being 69.4 days. There are 8 hurricanes, winds of 74 miles an hour or higher forecast for 2025, with a historical average being 6. There are 3 major hurricanes, winds of 111 miles per hour or higher, expected in 2025, with a historical average of 3.2. As with all hurricane seasons, coastal residents are reminded that it only takes one hurricane making landfall to make it an active season, the report states. A hurricane strikes the Northeast once every 15 to 20 years, AccuWeather stated in a release. Typically, every 15 to 20 years on average, a hurricane will strike New Jersey on northward into southern New England. A major hurricane, so that's Category 3 or higher, for the Northeast is every 60 or 70 years or so, De Silva explained. While Florida and the Gulf Coast face frequent hurricane landfalls, states from New Jersey to Maine have largely escaped direct strikes in recent memory, according to AccuWeather. A report from AccuWeather stated that the three major atmospheric forces typically needed to steer a storm toward landfall from New Jersey to Maine are a Bermuda high in the right place, a dip in the jet stream over the east coast, and a blocking high over eastern Canada. AccuWeather meteorologist Paul Pastelok says several large-scale weather patterns have to align at the same time for a hurricane to reach the northeast coastline. You pretty much need a perfect setup to get the perfect storm into New England, he stated. Compared to the Carolinas or the Gulf Coast, conditions can be off a little, and they still get hit hard. But for the Northeast, everything has to line up perfectly. We'll close this reading of the Cape Cod Times with a different kind of local news, the obituaries, death notices, and memorials that are listed. The first obituaries of Patricia Scott of South Yarmouth, known as Patty, who passed peacefully of natural causes, leaving behind longtime companion Dennis Cryan, her den, and many who will miss her dearly. For more information, you can visit chapmanfuneral.com. The next obituary is of Catherine Ann Roth of Chatham, who was born October 3rd of 1934, passed peacefully on August 8th. She was born in Amesbury. She loved Massachusetts, especially Chatham, where she spent her August summers beginning in the 60s and never stopped visiting. After beginning her career at Mass General, she eventually became head nurse of the operating room at the Phillips House, where she met her devoted husband of 62 years, Irwin. Services will be held this coming Wednesday, August 13th at 11 a.m. at the Nickerson Funeral Home, 87 Kroll Road in Chatham. It will be followed by an interment ceremony at People's Cemetery in Chatham. The third obituary is of Teresa D. Tusey of East Falmouth, who at the age of 74 passed on July 27th. She's gone home to be with her parents and siblings. She loved her family. Her true passion was the Red Sox. She was a huge fan and would never miss a game. She will be survived by many family and friends. There are no services noted. And that is the end of the obituaries published in the Cape Cod Times of August 11th of 2025. And we have a minute or two, so how about the Cape League Roundup? Yarmouth Dennis and Harwich to finish Game 2 on Sunday. Adam Kirkjian wrote this. The East Divisional Finals Game 2 between the Harwich Mariners and Yarmouth Dennis had a little bit of everything on Saturday, everything that is except for a winner and a loser. With it tied at 6-6 in the 13th, the Mariners and the Red Sox will come back Sunday at noon to complete that contest, which obviously happened yesterday. We don't know what that score is because the paper goes to press too early. Yarmouth Dennis scored in the bottom of the third inning. The Red Sox battled from a 6-1 deficit early on, only to tie it. In the bottom of the seventh, Yarmouth Dennis's Nick Costello from UC San Diego and Jace Tharnish of St. Bonaventure scored on an error. And Harwich exploded for 6 runs in the top of the fourth inning. In other Cape Cod Baseball League action, it was the Cotuit Kettleers 9 and the Bourne Braves 1. And with that, we've come to the end of our reading of the Cape Cod Times for August 11th. It was a half-hour reading because we read all the local news. And it is that time of year where we are just a little bit short on readers. If you're interested in volunteering, go to our website or give us a call at 508-539-2030. This is your reader, Eric, saying be well, be safe, look after each other. Bye for now.